Welcome to the first episode of My Life in Letters, which is a podcast dedicated and focused on documenting this culture that we're a part of, this graffiti culture, street art coming out of hip hop culture. I'm super excited and I'm thankful to have Luis Lamboy here. Luis writes Zimad, for those that don't know. And we were just talking earlier about some of Luis's earliest influences. And he was saying when he was riding on the trains as a 5-year-old in 1972, is that right, Luis?
Yeah, about that.
That you were
wasn't actually riding on the train, but riding in a van.
Yeah, you were reading these Sunday papers and you were learning how to draw these characters, Beetle Bailey, Dick Tracy, and then I had asked you about some of your first interactions with graffiti, and you said that you were seeing it on the handball courts up in the Bronx. Can you say again who were some of those heads that were on those handball courts?
The handball courts, I do remember. Kid 56, Mad 2, or was it 2 Mad? It might have been even 2 Mad. I remember the style of the 2, but I don't remember the placement. But he had like a really nice draw-ups.
And I'm super curious, man. In 72, what was your understanding of all this graffiti at the time? What was like a 5-year-old? How did you process that, and what did you think it was all about?
Well, in 72, I really didn't see, I wasn't focusing on graffiti. I was more focused on character base, which was like what I was drawing in the comics. It wasn't until maybe 7 years later when I started realizing the graffiti that was on the handball courts. It was then with people started asking me in the neighborhood if I would do their names. So I would do their names in like a really, I thought it was complex, but back then it was a really simple bubble style. And I would do the characters that I learned to do like on my way to my grandmother's house every Sunday.
And I'm interested in those bubble letters, those what you thought then was complex. Who was influencing that? Was it Kid 56 and Mad 2, or were there other guys that had influenced your letter style early on?
Yeah, it was so far back. I would say like Kid 56, Clyde, FDP. From a point I started seeing them up on the handball courts and buses and then even started taking more notice of the trains at that point. And that was, I would say, somewhere around 78, 70. 79, because 79 is when I really started to write on and deface property. So, and
what were you, 11 years old, 12 years old?
Oh, I was 14 at that point.
You were 14, okay. And I wonder, I have a 2-year-old now, and I wonder what really kind of registers with children. And yeah, I can only imagine growing up in New York in the 60s and 70s that if the graffiti was just all around you, I wonder if it was if people would just kind of block it out a little bit, like when you see all the advertisements in Times Square, or if it was really in everybody's consciousness and if they were really understanding it.
Well, back then the culture was really about us. It wasn't about doing it for anybody else. So it was like if you was a writer, you would notice it. If you really wasn't a writer, there was other things to distract you. So the neighborhoods were all burnt down. That was a big distraction. Crime was up, big distraction. So nobody really looked at the graffiti artists until it became the point where it became so much of it. And then it really started getting noticed. It was to a point where almost everybody was a writer back in maybe 81. If you was a teenager, you was either a breakdancer or a graffiti writer. So at that point, we started to get a little bit more noticed about what we was doing. Before that, it was it was a lot of things happening at the same time. I mean, you had Son of Sam in 77. You had most of the Bronx was burnt down, as well as parts of Brooklyn, where landlords were burning down the buildings just to get the insurance money.
Right.
So it's kind of when you look at that compared to graffiti, that seemed to be more of a focal point.
Yeah, and you mentioned that like you were either a writer or you were like a b-boy. Like I'm curious how much hip hop and like rap music, like how much that was influencing your particular work early on, like in that 79 time.
Yeah, well, I seen hip hop really like spring up like when the DJs were in the parks and before it even got like radio play. It was like yeah, if you wanted to hear it, you wouldn't hear it on the radio or on television. You would see it live.
Of course.
And that was the beginning. That was like it was pretty wild.
Where would you go? What parks were you hearing it?
Oh, I could have went straight down on my same block, between my block and the next block over, which was Jackson housing. They would be out there like in the summer, almost every other day, every weekend. It's just like if it was a hot, nice night, the DJs would come out.
Do you remember some of those DJs? Some of their names?
I don't remember.
Okay,
So long ago.
That's all right. And also, earlier you said, which housing projects did you grow up in?
Melrose Projects, 156 Cortland Avenue.
So I'm going to ask probably people every episode of this about how hip hop may have influenced their lettering and their sort of career. Because, not everybody was influenced necessarily by it, right? Like there were a lot of punk rock dudes that were doing graffiti, at least in the Bay Area in the 80s.
And before hip hop came about, graffiti was already years into like the culture was already built. Hip hop sprung out somewhere around 77. So most of the writers before that was listening to rock and roll.
Right.
They was listening to Zeppelin and the Doors and stuff like that. So it really was like the first element that became part of hip hop, but it was there maybe 10, 11 years beforehand.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting point. And I don't think that rock and roll and punk rock music, I don't think it gets enough credit for how much influence it had on this culture. I think most people will just immediately associate, like this style of graffiti with hip hop and hip hop culture. So I think that's that's an important point. I had mentioned in the email, like talking about your early graff timeline. And I think I kind of got that up until, so you're beginning to really put down. Now, were you on the streets? You said you were defacing. Were you doing streets or trains in 79?
At the age of 14, I started out in the streets. And most writers do. They kind of start out like in their neighborhood and then they start branching out to other neighborhoods. And then within school, you meet other writers, which invite you to come and do stuff, one night on the weekend in their neighborhood. So it's kind of like you start branching out and then you get comfortable enough with your style to actually just go on your own and hit the layups or hit the trains and in the yards or just go street bombing, and you're going to a club.
And so in 79, did you start writing Zimad?
I started writing Zimad in 79.
Can you tell us about that? How'd that come up, that name?
That name came up. I was 14, and the name came up because I was actually writing my real name. And one of my friends had told me, like, yo, what are you doing? Are you stupid? And and I was like, I didn't know any better. So it's kind of like, he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get your name," and he gave me the name Zimatic. And after a couple of days of writing it in the neighborhood, I felt it was a little bit too long. And that same week, I got into my first graff beat, where another neighborhood kid who was writing Testomatic, who thought the name, the word matic at the end of your name sounded too much like his. So he challenged me right off the bat. I didn't know nothing about this, and I'm still learning the culture. But I ended up going to the park to battle him, and he never showed up. So,
oh wow,
yeah,
Testomatic,
huh?
Testo,
Testomatic, and within a week, into my first beef, and then like I decided it was a battle for names. It was to stop writing Omatic, and even though he didn't show up, I actually ended up shortening my name anyway, and I felt like 5 letters. From seeing Too Mad on the handball courts and then getting the name Zimad, I shortened it because I liked the whole idea of the Mad. So I shortened it down to Zimad and been writing it ever since.
And do you think the Mad 2 or Too Mad had some influence on that?
I think, I think definitely.
Yeah.
With the style that he had on the handball court, was beyond, anything that I could do at that point. And I thought, I thought it was really cool, the mad sense of it, like the way it sounded. And I was like, it fits with Zimatic. I could just shorten it to that, and it'll be a totally different name, and still have that kind of like, it was so different that it wouldn't be another writer out there with the same name.
Yeah, and so you were writing, you were like writing Luis like for a little while. Who was the dude that gave you the name Zimatic?
I was writing Louis for in 2000. I mean, actually in 1979, I started writing Louis in the neighborhood.
How'd you spell that?
Louie.
Okay.
Sometime later, there was a guy who actually was writing Louis. So I'm glad for that. But it was kind of a common name where anybody who was named Louis or Louis would be writing their own name. So I didn't really want that either.
Right.
Yeah, so.
And so in 79, so you were doing streets. Oh, also, I got to ask you, so what was a battle like back then in the streets with another dude? Like, how were you going to battle that day at the park when he didn't show up? What were you guys going to do?
We was actually going to discuss right there on the spot whether it be a battle within a certain time to get up and see who gets up the most, or it was going to be a straight out battle on the wall right there in the park at that night, like his side against my side, and we get somebody to actually judge it out to see who won it.
So you went down there that night with paint?
I went down there without paint. I was just like still like oblivious to everything and wanted to know exactly what I was getting into.
Yeah. So, and on that topic of paint, tell us just a little bit, because I figured it was Rusto and a bunch of these names that are famous. What were you painting with? How were you getting it?
I was actually painting with Red Devil. It's the first paint I picked up. Mm-hmm. And then I quickly changed to like Krylon because of their color palette. I like that a lot more. They had more colors. I tried Rusto's, didn't really like it too much because it stayed tacky and wet. And I like to, even when you paint on top of wet, it actually blends the colors together. So I really didn't like Rusto's at all. Krylon was my preference once I learned, what brands were out there to use. And usually we sold it. We would go to the hardware store. At that time, it was still like the hardware stores was still like oblivious to kids stealing the paint. Mm-hmm. Because it was still early in my career. I would go with a bunch of guys. My thing is I also love to steal designer markers, going to the art store and getting those things. At one point, I had a couple of thousand of those things from racking up. So.
Do you remember what your favorite marker was from back then?
It was a designer marker. It was a designer marker for doing black books, but
the design, they were the original design. Now they made the design 2s, right, for a while. Yeah. Of course.
The original design was actually like a metal, encased metal marker.
Yeah, I remember.
And it had really good for blending and technique that you could really burn up a black book. And then my markers for writing in the streets and those were actually band roll-ons. We would pop the bowl out of a band roll-on and clean it out really good, and then we would steal an eraser from school back then the erasers weren't foam; they were
Yeah.
actually like different,
Like wool,
felt.
basically, right? They were like, yeah,
wool and felt.
yeah,
And we would just fold that over, shove it into the band roll-on, and then squeeze like supermarket purple ink in there, or even Flowmaster ink, and we would
Yeah.
just fill it so it would flood up. And that we would make our own mop tips out of that. So it would be a really nice, drippy, fat marker.
man, that's so classic. And I could go on for days asking you about your markers, but I think I'm going to keep this moving. But you know, I think like tools. I'm really interested in tools, and I think that this, this My Life in Letters podcast, I think I do want to focus on tools because it's so everyone has such preference. Like you were talking about Red Devil to Krylon, you didn't like Rusto. Like I mean, that's pretty important stuff, and it's unique. You know, like every writer is a little bit different. And but it's kind of amazing to hear.
You gotta remember also back then, everything was basically high pressure.
Right.
There was no low pressure paint like it is now.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who are doing it up now would probably have a really big problem with the paints we used back then.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it took time to really learn your craft with those, and then we used fat caps.
Yeah.
You know, and then our fat caps was something that we had to make.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I wanted to like I'll touch on that in a little bit because I just remember when I first started writing 92. We still had to do it. We were mixing colors, you know, we were taking pressure out of cans, we were freezing them, we were using the WD-40 caps with hoses together so we could mix. And like, I miss that era of being so like focused on how you make your craft better, right? And we'll get into modern stuff, but like you said, you know, like it's low pressure and then these like, you know, 200 color palettes that you can get. It takes a little bit of the fun out of it. It's also very convenient, so I get it. But I want to go back a little bit, still back into this timeline of your career. So 79 Streets, when did you first get into a layup and paint a New York City subway car?
That was somewhere around 84. 84 is when I was already down with like Bronx Artists at that time. And I think I got down with Bronx Artists in 79. It was a crew that was created by Duncan Dreys back in 76, 77. And so like I would go with just crew members and we would go to like more than anything like the layups. We would go like where Mars Park is. We would go to MPC territory and we would get in there and get out as soon as, as fast as we could before the crew came and took our shit or kicked our asses. But like, I would go with like, there's quite a few members. One of them I really don't want to mention at all.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely don't have to. But like I mentioned that, talking about crews, talking about, and I guess also, I'd be remiss to not talk about New York City street gangs just because that culture was so solidified in New York City through the 70s. So when you were with this Bronx Artists, were they completely sort of art focused, or was there still sort of remnants of street gang stuff in it?
No, it was mostly about graffiti. It was a crew about graffiti. They really weren't about violence. Probably the only violent thing is a couple of members were probably, dealing drugs here and there to make their money. Everybody had their hustle. But it was mostly based on graffiti.
Yeah, and how many dudes were in Bronx Artists, like at its peak?
Ooh, that's hard to say. I felt like Bronx Artists almost had two separate like chapters to it. When I came in, I was part of the younger group of guys, and then there was the older guys who were already like slowing down and doing their own thing. But like when I came into the picture, it may have been like maybe a good 30, 40 guys.
Wow. And like that makes me think about mentorship, right? Because like I feel pretty lucky, even though like I think I'm a maybe second or even third generation writer. If you think about me, like starting in 92, that's probably Would you actually, let me just ask that question, because I think that you can speak on this. How many generations do you think we've seen? Are you a second generation graph writer?
I think, well, you had the early 70s, you had the late 70s, and then I would categorize each decade as two generations of writers there. You had the early 80s and then the late 80s, and then you had 90s. So I would say you would be somewhere within
Fifth generation.
fourth and fifth generation.
Interesting. And you would be second?
I would be within the second, like just second going more into the third generation. Yeah.
That's cool, man. And so that makes me think about when in 92, like I was really lucky that all the kids in my high school were writing, and we were all youngsters, right? But we had connections to what we considered the first generation Bay Area, like San Francisco writers, right? And these dudes like Crayon and Neon, these guys were the ones that were teaching us how to mix paint, how to make markers, where to rack, how to paint streets. So that mentorship idea, which I think is totally dead now, and we could talk about that, but it's from what I see, like everyone's mentor is Instagram or the internet. You can just go get some paint and go online and learn some letters and go out, right? And it's like that idea of like having someone bring you up is kind of gone. Can you talk about who it was that really kind of brought you up? Maybe they're from Bronx artists or not, but who?
It was actually Dunk, my partner at the time. Like
Dunk?
He took me, Dunk. And he took me under his wing, and I ended up actually being a partner with him for many years, where we done things, got busted together, and he was more on the character-based side, I would say. Like he always loved doing characters, and I always loved more doing the lettering aspect of it. So we actually teamed up and did pretty good productions back then.
And
we
so
just play off each other.
And how much older was Dunk than you?
Dunk is probably I would say about 2 to 3 years older. So as I was 14, he was already up to 16, maybe 17.
And like after Dunk, were there some other heads that influenced? Or that actually, beyond influence, because I think that probably happened a lot. Who was teaching you?
Yeah, well, a lot of the things you learned by who you painted with. You always, I always felt like if you're painting with somebody who's better than you, eventually you're gonna get really good because you're gonna like pick up their habits and their traits, and even like you start seeing the style becoming closely similar to the person you paint with. So I think that is also another form of being mentored.
Yeah.
With me, since I was already an artist, I kind of bounced back and forth between doing the graffiti and doing like art. And I found myself like back in maybe 83, 84 already starting to produce canvases for like shows and stuff.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So because that's really like you've been a working artist. Well, I mean, it sounds like for most of your life now. Because in '84, you started doing some of your first fine art that was more commercial, like you were trying to sell.
It was actually graffiti on canvas. It was what I was doing in the streets, with kind of like scenic type vibes to them. So it was a mixture of both, where I was experimenting with, doing scenes with graff. And I didn't think I seen anything like that at the time because you was either like an artist or you was a graffiti artist. And that's what you did, And when you did graffiti, back then it was more like on the hip hop side because you would have b-boy characters and stuff, elements like that added to your work. I just happened to be blessed to get a show in Fashion Motor, which was the only gallery at the time showing any kind of graffiti work.
What was the name again?
Fashion Motor.
Where was that?
And that was in the Bronx. And yeah, that gallery was at that time. That gallery was showing Pink, Crash, Days, Ernie. So it was like Tracy 168, Toxic, A1. So it was showing like really top, even to this day, top graffiti artists. Uh, and even through that gallery, I think it kind of like it was a stepping stone for other galleries to start showing art. I mean, showing graffiti style art.
And how did you get that first show? How did that go down?
I used to go there to check out the shows that were going on, and I met Stefan, who was actually the gallery curator, and I showed him. I believe I showed him a couple of the canvases that I was working on at the time, and he really dug it. And I still have that canvas to this day hanging in my studio.
Oh, really? So that's like
Yeah.
you said it's one of your scenic. Can you describe it a little bit for those of us who can't see it?
It was actually like it was a whole swamp scene, and it had like these trees and backpacking off the trees. At the time, I was also influenced by the magazine Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
So it's like I was like seeing futuristic type paintings and illustrations through this magazine. So I actually did like this whole swamp, and you see bubbles like bubbling up to the middle of the swamp, and my name is just rising right out of the water. So that was, and most of the coloring on the piece is in greens and olives and beiges, and then my piece is in like a nice bright blue, just popping right out of the swamp.
And that was part of that first show?
That was part of the first show.
But you kept it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I believe I had it for sale at the time. It was probably going for dirt cheap, but like right now, it's a part of my history.
Yeah.
And I do have a couple of pieces that I did back then. Not many. A lot of the times I did sell, but like the ones I did keep, which were very detailed, they're part of. They're like permanent like archive pieces in my studio.
Yeah. And so I'm curious then, like, can you just talk a little bit about the fine art timeline? So that's 84, you do your first show in the Bronx. Then how did it go? How did it all happen?
It was great because all those people I mentioned earlier, I was showing with them. And it was kind of like, for me, being a younger cat, these guys were already doing that stuff for a couple of years. It was exciting for me. I didn't care if I sold or not. It was just the idea of being in shows with these people that I looked up to. And I'm so grateful, like, it took many years later to actually meet every single one of those people and become friends with those people. So they're big influences on my career.
And so then did like what took you to Europe the first time to show?
Oh, Europe. Well, I actually started showing stuff in Europe in the 90s. I never really went back then, but I would ship out pieces to people that were buying my stuff out there. And to this day, I still do the same thing. Like people hit me up, or I got like the auction house out there now that lets me know, like, oh, I need paintings for the auction, which is kind of ironic. I just got paid yesterday for one of my pieces that I actually sold out there at auction. So it's kind of like
that's fantastic.
Yeah, funny talking about that now, and that just happened. But like,
and I'm curious, like, how was it those other guys that came before you? Because I feel like the fine art, the gallery world. It's very complicated, and the politics are ridiculous. The it's who you know component is ridiculous, and so I just wonder like how you learn to navigate through that world and be professional and not get taken advantage of, which is another thing I want to get to after that. But can you just talk about like how you learned how to maneuver?
Well, I was young when I first got into it. So it's kind of like maneuvering through it. It's kind of a learning process. It may take you 10, 15, 20 years before you start becoming picky about who you show with now. Because in the beginning you want to take it all. You want anybody who wants to accept your work. You're showing in wherever you can. And not it's not always great, for your career, because sometimes you won't be taken serious if you're showing in a restaurant, or at a bar.
Right.
You won't be taken as serious as a person who's strictly about good galleries. But also at the same time, right now, there's so many artists in the world, the galleries get to really get their pick of who they want. And a lot of times now it's like they contact you if they want you. So it becomes difficult, but you learn to like navigate that whole thing. And of course, during the whole process, sometimes you get taken advantage of. Sometimes it's hard to trust people, like whether you're going to get your work back if it doesn't sell,
right?
Or they just end up disappearing. And I've had work disappear. I've had a show where, they want to hold on to a couple of pieces here and there, and then the next thing you know, they're shut down and you don't know where to find them. So it's kind of like I got work out there that have definitely not been sold, but they've been taken. And it's kind of like something that you gotta just learn to live with, because and you gotta still take your chances and do the shows, because if you kind of like climb up and like, I don't want to do it no more, I keep getting my stuff stolen or whatever the case may be. If you're like that, you'll never become a big artist, because you could keep creating, but there's nobody to see it.
Yeah. So there's it sounds like there's almost as much risk, if not more.
Yeah, you take a chance.
Yeah.
You definitely take a chance, because it's kind of like you don't know if the place even has insurance in some of these places that you do, so kind of like if the place burns down, you're shit out of luck. That's it, right. And you just get back in your studio and keep creating.
But you would say that that's only happened to you a small amount of times?
Yeah, a very small amount of times. It's, because I'm very picky, like even now, like I've become like even more picky about who I show with, or who I do things with. Like if it feels like it isn't like a quality gallery, maybe even a B, I'll do. But like when it becomes like, okay, now you're doing stuff where it's a pop-up here and there.
Yeah.
I really don't like doing those things. There's got to be like a professional atmosphere, and I got to really feel it. And if I do feel it, I'm with it. If I don't, I was like, no, thank you. I don't need the headache.
Yeah. And early on, there must have been, you just couldn't afford to say no, right? So there were just a lot of gigs you probably just had to do because you were trying to pay your bills.
Yeah. Early on, you basically take anything and everything, because you still are trying to make a name for yourself in the gallery world. Yeah. You want the people who go to these specific galleries and they're kind of regulars, and you want them to start knowing who you are. So you could do that, And now it's a whole different game, because when you did graffiti, you did that in the streets, and you did that for your peers and yourself. And now when you're in the gallery world, you're doing it as a business. Yeah. So you have to learn the whole business of the gallery world, which is totally different than the streets. Right. So, you just gotta like, I have like this chameleon that I got tattooed on my arm, and it kind of represents that whole idea of, you have to like adapt to your environment, just like a chameleon would adapt by changing its color to blend into his environment. I have to do that as an artist as well, and learn as much as I possibly can with everything. It ain't just about doing graffiti, or just doing a gallery show, or just being an illustrator. You got to learn how to do it all in order to survive in this game.
Yeah. That's such a cool like analogy, man, that chameleon that you have to be.
Yeah, yeah. So I always felt like I was a chameleon because I could adapt to any situation. If you tell me I want to do a waterfall scene, I could do it. You want just graffiti letters, I could do it.
Hmm.
You want to pay me a commission to do your pizzeria gate, I could do it. So it's kind of like if you're not able to adapt to either painting on a gate or a fence or a brick wall. I mean, I've heard people like, "Oh, I can't paint on this surface. It's not good for what I'm doing."
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, then you're not you unless you learn how to do that kind of thing, you won't survive because other people will take the job.
Yeah. That's true. And and I think that I mean it's kind of a I'm curious about when you were first learning how to be a chameleon in the business world, because that's I think a lot of dudes from the street have a hard time just speaking, with intelligence and speaking professionally, knowing how to negotiate your rate.
Yeah.
Which this is something that myself and a few other friends are going through right now. This notion of, if you don't value yourself, and if you aren't willing to say that you're worth 10 grand, 15, 50 for this gig, whatever it is, there's no way that the client is going to value you any more than that, right? So like,
Absolutely.
I'm curious about like the first time you said that your work was worth whatever, $25,000. You say a number that's big. Was that like a shock to you? Like coming out of your own mouth, quoting these certain big numbers, or was it just part of the game?
Well, it's actually scary in the beginning because you also want to make some money.
Yeah.
But you and by doing that you have to sell. So I always like created works that were not only expensive but affordable. So like for instance, if somebody was like, "Oh, I can't afford that price; it's too high for me," I would have like, "Oh, well, check out these. These are a little bit lower."
Yeah.
But like to actually come out and say like, I think like some of my early pieces I put like 5 grand, 10 grand on, and I may still have one or two of those pieces still with me.
Right.
And now they're even worth more in value because it's my earlier work.
Sure. Yeah.
But like even back then, it was pretty scary. I was like, I don't think I'm going to sell it because I got like 5 grand on it because of I felt it was worth it at that time because of the technique I used or the detail that I put into it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The time is a factor.
Of course.
Also, like works that I've sold in the past that were not as high as that range, but pretty like within the middle of that range. So you're kind of like trying to push the envelope to see, if you could get what you feel it's actually valued at.
And then you run the risk of not selling it at all, right? So let's say you put 5 grand. If you had put 3 grand, you may have sold it, and that would have been an important sale at the time. And so
I've had things that were like maybe 5 grand, and somebody talked me down to like, cut it to 3, 5, or whatever the case may be. And then if I feel like I could do that, I'll do it. Because I also take in count, like, let's say a canvas cost me $50 and the paint cost me only $10. I'm still making a really nice margin on and profit on the piece. So it's kind of like, okay, I could still afford to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't do that too often. I try to stay within the range that I chose. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't sell, I'll hold on to the piece and move it at another time.
Yeah.
I feel there's something out there for everybody. And, when you got clients that would be like, "Oh, I'm interested in something that's kind of like this and that." Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, "Oh, I got just the right thing for you." And this could be like a painting that I haven't sold for like maybe 3 or 4 years, and it'll pop back up and I'll eventually sell it.
Yeah. And so I'm interested then, do you have like a scale? Like, do you know that you have like 4 different size canvases that you work on and all 4 of them go from small to large? Do you have a scale like that? Or do you have to look at each piece and say, X amount of space, X amount of paint, 100 hours of work, and then you begin to come up with your rate for it, your fee?
I judge my pricing on the look of the piece when it's done. I can have a 12 by 12 piece that is more detailed than a 4 foot by 4 foot piece.
Right.
And I would want more money for that piece because of the look and how everything fell into place, the balance of the piece.
Yeah.
So I really don't judge by size. I don't judge by time. When I do a piece, when the piece tells me, okay, I'm done, you can't do no more to me, that's when it's finished. And then at that point, I look at it overall and be like, this piece looks to me like it's worth $3,000 easy. So I'll play with the number in my head. I'll even after the piece is done, I'll bring it upstairs to my living room and I'll place it on the floor next to the TV. So as I'm watching TV, I'll look at it every now and then and be like, yeah, that's definitely a $3,000 piece. and I'll judge it like that.
That's awesome.
More than anything. You could spend 100 hours on a painting and it'll look like shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't ask the same because of the size or the hours. I mean,
yeah.
It also goes by what you're selling at already.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like a comfortable range for me is anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my range. I could easily move a piece at that price range, with no problem.
Yeah.
And but I still create work that are a little bit less, for people that don't got that kind of money. And I still got pieces that are a lot more that I know I could sell for like $5,000 and $10,000.
Yeah.
I just choose depending on what shows I get into.
I'm curious, when the painting is there next to the TV, because I know that you're married, I know you have kids. How much is your family's input on your work? Does it affect you?
Well, my kids are out of the house already.
Yeah.
They've already finished school and done, and they're out. So it's just me and my wife in the house, and she really, my wife doesn't really understand the art completely. She sees, she sees things, and I know her taste. So there's things she likes and some things she, it's like whatever, and I'm cool with that. So the input on my family really isn't huge.
And then, did you ever have a manager?
No.
So you've always managed your own fine art career?
Yes. I've basically done my whole career myself.
Mm-hmm. You also had some fine art partners though, right?
I've had partners in the past that I've done stuff with where they're like, let's put on a show.
Right.
Let's do something together or let's work together. It was just not, I would say maybe the past couple of years, not even long ago, where I just started to collaborate with people.
Oh, on one canvas, for instance?
On canvas. Yeah. On canvas. I mean, I've collaborated with people throughout my whole career. When you look at two graffiti writers doing a wall or doing a train, you're actually collaborating.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when it comes to canvas, I just started doing that maybe within the last 4 years.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a big influx of people wanting to do collaborative work just the past few years. It's always happened, but it's been a big influx lately. Who have you worked with lately?
I really it's hard for me to do it. I don't know if I feel the same pleasure in just painting what I want to paint than actually thinking about, because when I paint, the things come to me. I don't get artist block, but I get something where it's like a flood. I get the total opposite. I get a flood of ideas where they come to me and I actually just start painting, and I don't plan out the painting. I let the painting dictate to me what it needs.
Nice.
As I'm painting, I'm already thinking of the next step or 2 steps ahead of what I'm doing. And you can't really do that when you're collaborating.
Right.
Because it's kind of like, okay, we're going to discuss what we're going to do. And I really don't paint that way. So I find it it's been difficult, and I think I'm going to really stop doing it. I'm not going to do too many of those anymore.
Yeah, just focus on your own
Yeah, just focus on what comes out of me.
And I was asking earlier about like a manager or about now knowing that you self-managed yourself the whole time. And I guess I'm trying to figure out a way to segue into the internet, but and I think one of those ways was that all of a sudden you had this new marketing tool, right? Like before, your work was just through word of mouth, through galleries, and then all of a sudden, right, like early '90s, we get the internet. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how that affected both your graph and your fine art, because I don't know when you first got online, if it was like mid 90s or early 90s or whatever, but if you could talk a little bit about how that changed things early on.
Yeah, I think I got online. I started getting online like mid '90s, and just like I guess through email, I would start out that way by sending photos here and there, or even like getting in touch with galleries through email. And then I don't remember. I don't remember at what point I started using the computer as a networking tool. Um, it had to be like maybe even late '90s when I developed my own website, and that was with the help of my sister, who kind of grew up with the whole computer age.
Right.
And I had to actually learn it since I was older. It was a little bit harder for me to get into it, But I did see like if it wasn't for like the internet, I probably would have less works out there. Definitely Europe. Europe is a lot of my sales that happened in Europe all came from the computer.
Yeah.
More than anything, it came from the computer where people were seeing what I was doing. And I had to learn how to be like, how do I get my name to be like, as soon as you type it into Google, it becomes like the first page that comes up.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of learning. Now you Google Zimad and maybe 300 pages come up.
Yeah.
So I felt like I've become successful with that. But like, yeah, it was tricky. I mean, like in the age and time that I grew up, there was no computer graphics. We didn't even have cell phones. We had beepers,
Yeah.
so beepers in a pocket full of dimes,
Yeah.
and that's how we communicated. I mean, when we heard like Tax Crew got a new piece on Webster Avenue, you would get on the bike or hop the train to get to the piece with your 110 camera to get a photo of it, and that's how that was our internet. We would bring the photo, get it developed. It took like a week and a half, at the photo places, Walgreens or whatever, and then we would show off the photos in albums. So it's kind of like it was a different world for us from what we learned and what we knew.
Yeah, and then publications came out, right? Like you would get like subway art and street can, spray can art, and then the emergence of magazines, which was a huge thing on the West Coast because we couldn't see what everyone on the East Coast was doing, but it was these magazines. And
then the VHS tapes and all that stuff.
Then the tapes, and then the internet, right? And so, I'm always curious about how a guy like you can maintain a fine art career, but then you also stayed nice with the cans. You always have had dope pieces, and that's pretty rare. Like a lot of dudes who have split like you, they will have like really great canvas work, but their letters kind of start to fall. And so I wonder if the internet, like if you were seeing a lot of graph in the 90s and 2000s, if you were following that to kind of keep up your styles on walls.
Not really. I think there was a part in the '90s, maybe 4 years, where I actually took a break from everything. Like I didn't want to do anything at all, and I focused more on working and making money. And then Guernsey's had this really big graffiti show come out.
Who was that? Who had it?
Guernsey's Auction House.
Oh, okay.
Somebody had told me about a big graff show that's happening, and I actually snuck in. I actually got into the show. with uh, some works that I had started like in the early 90s. I finished them up, got them in the show, and that actually sparked me to come right back out. Now, at that time, this was like maybe 98, 90, 99. I had to learn how to use the spray can all over again because it was a different world. It wasn't like the Krylon and the Red Devils and Rustos all over again. It was like now you had all these art brand paints coming out,
Yeah.
which were like, okay, these are lower pressure. Like it helped that there were lower pressure to come back out.
Yeah.
But it was like learning how to use a spray can all over again.
And what were those years again that you were kind of taking that break?
The break, I think it was like between 94 and 97, 98.
And at that time you said you were just working and making money. So you were just painting canvases at that time?
Oh, I wasn't even painting canvases.
What were you doing?
I didn't even pick up a pencil to sketch.
What were you doing for work at that time?
At that time, I was working at Sotheby's Auction House as a fine art handler. So what I was doing was I was handling all the paintings that were coming into the building.
Amazing. Were you packaging or were you just were you placing?
I was doing everything. So it's a whole process where the paintings come in. The clients leave them to put for auction. So I would take care of it, like store it away. When it was time to get photographed, I would pull it out, get it photographed, put it back away, and get it ready for sales. When the sales came, there was an exhibition where I would have to tag them, scan them, get them to the exhibition floor, hang them, let them be on exhibition for 4 days, and then it would go on the turnstile where it would get auctioned off. And so from beginning to end process, I would be dealing with that.
That's amazing, dude. And how did you get that job? Like briefly, did you just walk up and, No,
well, that job is another funny story. I was working for a sweatshop in the early 90s, designing T-shirts. I would do T-shirt designs for this one sweatshop, and I wasn't really getting paid a lot at all. I was probably coming home with $200 in my pocket every week.
Wow.
And so there was a point where I quit and wrote a nasty letter to my boss saying that he was a slave driver and I'm done being a slave to this company. And I stepped, and it was close to the summertime, and I was doing some odd jobs here and there where I was, painting gates for people and making some money here and there. Not much, but I happened to, at one point, one of my friends who was working at Sotheby's asked me if I was still doing T-shirts because he had like a basketball tournament where he was in charge of getting all the jerseys. So when I told him that I quit that job, he was like, "Oh, you should come work with Sotheby's. I'll get you an interview." And he got me in the door. And from that point on, I worked with them, with the union, for like 18 years.
Oh, really? You worked with Sotheby's for 18 years?
About 18 years. I was an art handler. And then I became, at one point, I became a general foreman where I was running my own crew of maybe a crew of maybe 43 to 45 guys.
Wow. And what union was that?
I was a Teamster, Local 814.
For 18 years?
For 18 years. And it was the Art Handlers Union. We was part of the Art Handlers, which was 814.
That's so cool. I didn't even know it existed. That's amazing. And I'm often wondering, if people like you, that have this fine art career, if it was always just the paint that paid your bills, or if you had something else going on. So that's so interesting and cool to learn. And so you're there. You took a break from painting with cans for a few years, but you stayed at Sotheby's for many years.
Yep.
How was that, being a Sotheby's art handler, and then in 97, 98, whatever, going back and painting streets again and doing graffiti? Were those two worlds, were they just like a perfect blend, or was there any like pushback? Were you nervous, for instance, that like Sotheby's employees, your bosses may know?
Well, it came to a point where um, I was always around the art, being at Sotheby's. So even though I took a break, I was still studying and still looking at the art that I was handling. So in a sense, it was more like a break from actually doing it and a break to learn it. So, but like when I actually came back out, it was more on the legal tip. It was since I was working at Sotheby's, I didn't want to I didn't want to lose that job because it was a really good paying job, but also at the same time, I got motivated to start painting again. So I would let people know, and people knew at Sotheby's before I even got there who I was from what I had done in the past. Um, so it was kind of a good thing that, bosses would know what I did,
Right.
Yeah, as long as I wasn't doing it illegally and then getting arrested and it would make a bad name for Sotheby's, I was good. Even like when they had like employee shows at Sotheby's, I would display graffiti. I would actually hang my graffiti paintings
Oh, tell
in
me.
Sotheby's for shows. So
That's
people,
awesome. So tell me about that. They have employee shows.
yeah, once a year they have an employee show, and it's usually around this time of year. Like it comes right before Thanksgiving, so they would do any employee who were artists who wanted to display works for like a whole week at Sotheby's. We would have a gallery to actually do that.
That's
So
so cool.
I've shown like since I was there, I showed like every year there.
Wow, nice. And you showed graph. You showed letters.
But yeah, I just showed what I did with the scenic type stuff mixed in with graff. And I would actually sell there because you would still have clients coming in wanting to see what's going on, but also have other employees that would be like, yo, I want to buy this piece. Okay, it's 1,800, no problem. And so I would actually even sell there.
I was gonna ask you about like when we were talking about the internet, like being anonymous and like having like your identity like totally transparent and like everybody knowing who you are. I mean, I think, again, as a dude that had a fine art career where people need to know that this is Luis Lamboy, like they can contact you, they can buy your work. And then you have Zimad, right? And Zimad's still doing some stuff on the streets that might be illegal or illegal. And then, was there ever a time when you thought, oh wow, they're gonna come after me for all that dirt that I did in like early 80s? How did you process that?
Well, back then when I was younger, like in the '80s, I was putting on shows, but I was still doing illegal. But like at that point, I didn't care. I was like, if I get caught, I get caught. They're gonna know that the two guys is actually one guy at that point. But like I was more concentrated in the '80s on doing illegals more than doing shows.
Yeah.
I did shows here and there, but not as extensive as I do now. Um, but like as when I came back, and I was doing it on the legal tip, I didn't care, really if people knew that I was the same guy because I wasn't doing nothing wrong at that point. And the statute of limitation is like, what I did in the '80s is already 20 years ago or more. So people wouldn't really come after me for that stuff.
And
I mean, I did stuff that was even federal. If I would have got caught at the time when I was doing like post office, like I would jump. I would go on the post office rooftops and cut all the fences and actually go up there and do pieces because they faced the train.
Right.
Nice. So it's kind of like if I got caught, it would have been a federal case on me. But I didn't care at the time.
Well, I mean, it's all worked out. And so like I'm curious, like, because I want to wrap this up. I want to be like conscious of your time, but like what's next for Zimad, for Luis? Because like I just texted you was it like a week ago saying, hey, you want to get this wall? Let's go paint a wall. And you were like, yeah, maybe I will, because maybe it's like time. What's next? Are we going to see less Zimad on the walls?
Yes, I've been actually debating that. It's kind of like a debate that I've been having for many years already. Like within the last 5 years, like I've been like, okay, it's time to like I'm going to be 52. I've done this for like 37 to 38 years of my life, and it's time to like stop with the walls because, and I believe this will be my last year doing walls because my body doesn't heal the same way it used to back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll do a wall now and it could be a quick wall. It could be like 4 hours, but like I'm feeling a week worth of pain. You know, like I'm in, like I'm sore, my muscles are sore, my body's sore for like a whole week after painting a wall.
I hear you, brother. I hear it. I feel the same way sometimes.
Yeah, and as you get older, you realize, okay, I'm starting to feel arthritis, you know, and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, I got to be like a little more health conscious about what I'm doing and how I spend my time. So what I'm going to be doing starting like the beginning of 2017, which I haven't done in a long time, is really just focus on the galleries. Focus on getting into the top galleries. Instead of the B-level galleries that I've been doing, you know, try and get into the Jonathan Levines and start sending my works for gallery shows overseas or across the country, and actually traveling to these shows and to make an appearance at the openings. It's where I want to go. I think that's where my head is headed.
That's great. I mean, it makes sense, dude. It makes sense. You know, your work is at a certain point now where I could just see that happening. So,
and my work has taken another direction. It's actually, I feel like every time I try to be even more relevant than I am, I escalate to like getting my works to another point, and I feel it's like a ladder, and I'm climbing another step in my evolution in what I'm doing. So right now I'm experimenting with a more finer art, and all the paintings I'm doing now actually have stories attached to them.
Nice.
So, and it's more of a loving and more family-based orientated paintings. And they're also dealing with situations that we have in our world that, you know, are very different from what I've grown up in. So like, yeah, it's a new take on how I'm painting and what I'm painting. And I'm going to like, I'm working on the series now for that. And they will be displayed in the spring in Long Island at the Great Neck Art Center. There'll be a two-man show.
Oh, when's that going to be? What are the dates of that?
We don't have the date yet, but it'll be in the spring. So it'll be like a really like a coming out of new works.
Okay, cool.
Is my next part of evolution.
You know, I think I have only like a couple more questions for you. And one of them is, dude, like what keeps you motivated? What's inspiring you to keep on painting, to keep on doing what you do? What's your inspiration?
My inspiration, I actually go to a lot of art shows. And I limit those as well. Like I gotta really feel the show.
Yeah.
Like there's gonna be like I could see by who's showing it and who's in the show if the show's gonna be a great show. So I'm going to a show like even like this Saturday. I'm going to a show that at Last Rites Gallery, which is a incredible gallery, and they're gonna be showing like the most insane artwork. So going to a show like that this weekend, I'm going to be coming home so hyped up that I won't be able to sleep. And when that happens, and I get so involved with the works, but also kind of recharging my battery to be like, I got to go straight to the studio as soon as I go home and continue and grind and get this done, because I felt, you know, emotionally attached to what the show was showing. Yeah. So like shows like that really inspire me to do what I do.
So cool, man. So last thing, why don't you tell people like how they can find you, how they can contact you, buy your work, hire you for a gig, all that information.
Um, if people want to see, like, I actually have a couple of networking things that I do. And they're all, if you look on all of them, they're all different. So it's kind of like it keeps the person's interest, like, oh, let me see what he's doing on his website page, which is www.lewislamboy.com, LuisLamboy.com. That one shows a lot of my finer art, and they're more expensive paintings. There's no graffiti on there. I do show my bio and the shows I've had done since '84 to present.
Nice.
And then I have my Instagram, which if you want to see like right now what I'm doing, and it's kind of like I'm very picky about what I put on Instagram. I will show a flyer, but as soon as the show happens, the flyer comes down. So it's kind of like it's a really clean page, and it shows all the newer things I'm doing, and I try to keep that pretty up to date. And my Instagram is Zimad_art. And for Facebook, it's basically what I put everything. I got everything in folders, from flyers to old school stuff to shows to walls.
Oh, so there's like an archive. There's like an archive there of old stuff.
Yeah,
Nice.
I treat Facebook as an archive
Nice.
to everything. So you could go into my folders and actually see and learn about things that I've done, and it's all actual based on art. Every page I do is based on art and what I do, and you'll never see food posts, pet posts,
Okay.
posts of trees or scenic. You'll see art when you see my pages.
Oh, and what's the Facebook page?
The Facebook page is I believe it's Louis Zimad Lamboy. LuisZimad Lamboy.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure everybody will definitely go check it out. And can we purchase your art through any of those sites? Can we buy stuff? Like, do you have a?
I mean, I make a lot of sales by people just seeing something they like and be like, oh, is this for sale?
Oh, so they direct message you. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I would suggest people just don't be shy. I'll work with prices.
Nice.
Like, I'm very fair about my prices. Sometimes people tell me I'm a little bit too low, but like I enjoy having people own my work. It keeps me going in a sense. Like when people got to understand, for me as an artist, when I sell a piece, more than 50% is going back into buying supplies to keep creating, so people could see. Yeah, so it's kind of like I'm reinvesting the money that I do sell from pieces back into the art.
It's dope, man. Hey, this Sunday, are you going to be looking at those Sunday comics, those Sunday funnies?
No, those days are gone. I mean, right now I could actually look any day, like on the computer, speaking about like, the new generation of computers. So I can always look up those things. But more nowadays, I find that I'm not really looking at stuff like that anymore. I'm trying to really create from my mind.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like from memory, and which makes it a little bit more, more me.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I see a lot of artwork out there nowadays that you could tell like somebody took a photo and then they're working off a photo, whether the photo is by permission or not.
Right.
But if you take a hot, sexy girl offline and then paint her and like, oh, this is my art, I'm like, it's nothing really creative about that.
Yeah.
It's something that you just looked at and recreated because you're a good painter.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like a lot of things nowadays have been like the imagination has been a little bit lost. And so I try to like really just create out of my head, and that's why I don't sketch out or draw out. Like I try to like really just do it as it comes and let it dictate once again like what it wants for what it needs to have to make the balance.
That's awesome. Dude, thank you. This has been really, really great. And, I
always fun.
Again, this is the very first one, and I think it was a great one. And thanks. And,
Absolutely.
I think that's it.